Hey guys, so welcome back to another voiceover tutorial. This one will be the extra not safe for work bits. For this, I'll be doing the private area of both female and male to show you guys. And yeah, let's get started. So for the female, I'm taking some of the ones that was part of the torso tutorial from a few terms ago. Now I picked these ones because I feel like there could be room for the private bits, because the other ones were a little bit in a trickier angle, so I'm not sure if if I'm able for those, but these ones can definitely do that. So usually for the female private bits, it's actually a lot easier because, you know, girls don't really have that much detail in their private bits, but guys, they do. It's a lot more protruded, so you get to see more. So for girls, it's fairly simple. At least that's what I think. So first of all, I have to extend this a little bit. Have to make sure that we have the legs going. So let me just quickly kind of sketch out with the lasso tool. Hopefully this makes sense. Definitely need more length here. I'm just gonna sketch it out. So basically it's quite simple. First, I usually like to do the detailless private like Barbie doll-ish thing first. Just sketch out the general shape first, and of course we have to kind of paint out the rest of the character as well. Always first go for the biggest the biggest detail first. Leave the smaller detail for later. So we have that done. Let's just blur it out with our trusty blur tool. Like that. Need to kind of fix this area a bit more. So right now I'm just trying to make sure that we have the legs done so that we can do the naughty bits later. Gotta make sense. When it comes to male or female, we have to think about the butt. The butt is because if the leg is kind of doing something dynamic like this, sometimes, you know, you'll see the butt a little bit depending on where the other leg position is, kind of like have a little bit of a curve for the butt area. That goes for guys and girls because both of them have butts. Okay. And of course darken some of these areas. Let's lock it down so we can make this part a little brighter so that it goes with the theme of the color theme of this whole character. And of course finish the hip. Okay, so now that we're done, so basically at least for me, it's just a little line here. It's very simple when you're not like in a delivering baby position or in the receiving position. It's very straightforward and simple, just a little line, cute little line like that. Of course you can put more detail into it, however sometimes I just keep it fairly simple and just make sure the surrounding area of the character is nice and clean and sharp. Just sharpen this area up and blur the surrounding. Okay, so pretty much that's pretty much it. It's a little line with two curves to make it a little cuter looking, and then sometimes put just a dab of highlight on both sides. But you know, sometimes you have to see if it looks better or not. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily look better. So that then it's up to you to decide. Let me just kind of bring this leg up a bit here. We also have to make sure it's not overly too big on one side, because maybe this might be a little too big on one side. Let's just kind of reduce the canvas a bit so we can flip it. So let me just flip that to see if, okay, I think that looks fine. So I guess we should be okay for this. And now for this girl, and I'm just gonna go for a pretty simple pose again. Gosh. A fairly simple pose like this. And of course, shade that up. Let's make this leg stick out and this leg going in the back. So I like to use the oh gosh, I don't think that looks very good. Let me just tilt this a little. I'm using the airbrush really fast to pretty much determine which direction the leg will be going, and from that point on I'm gonna use a solid round brush or with a darker color, and then I'm gonna just kind of sketch out the knotty bits and the legs. So for this one, I'm thinking the girl is probably a little skinnier, so I'm gonna make the legs a little skinnier looking, and then I'm thinking maybe have this leg stick up a little bit like this, and then this leg to be behind this leg, kind of like that. So after I determine which direction it's going, I'm going to try to connect the legs with the rest of her body. However, right now it's looking very, very soft, so we have to kind of use the lasso tool. I'm using the lasso tool to balance it out with some sharpness. And of course, on this side, oh gosh, might be too bright, so just keep it very, very subtle. And let's go ahead and do the other leg. Gotta keep this area sharp, especially because the legs are very, very close together, so it creates a very thin shadow. Let me close this, and then we're gonna use a bit of whatever shadow that I used on the other bit for this part, and keeping this leg fairly in highlight. I can also do this to give the impression that this leg is definitely over that leg. Okay, and fixing the hip. So pretty much a similar deal, but first, before we do that, I'm gonna make sure a bit of the crotch is in shadow first before I do anything. We have to make sure that we have to make sure that the shadow is accurate, especially before we add the little line there. We have to make sure that it looks okay. And how do you know that? It really helps if you zoom out. If you zoom out and you can kind of sort of tell what's going on, that means that you're doing it right. Okay, so now I'm going to flip it once more just to make sure everything is proper. Also, I'm gonna just kind of low-key hide this arm behind the leg here. I don't want to deal with it. Okay, so now that that's done, let's go ahead and select an even darker color. Line this area very, very carefully. It's not done yet. There we go. And then blur that out. Now we can put the little line. So this one, I'm gonna put it a little bit higher, just because this one, her hips are kind of arched. so you don't see it as much, but this one, her hips are not as arched as that one, so you can see the line a bit more. And of course there's a lot of photos online if you have trouble with it, but that's just how I do it. I usually do the smooth version first and then add the little line. For females at least. Females are a lot easier than male genitalia. So we have that, and just kind of shade it using the airbrush to keep it nice and soft. And we can make the two parts very obvious. And then we can add a little bit of highlight on both sides. And of course, a bit of a sharper shadow here. And just kind of, there we go. And then blend this out, and voila, that's pretty much it. Also, some of you, I've read comments saying how come my depiction of male genitalia is more detailed than female ones. Guys have more detail there, that's pretty much how it is. And usually when it comes to girls, I like to keep it cute, simple, and clean, so it's not super detailed. And also the poses I do with female pinups are not always like super exposed, so it's kind of like simple like this. Alright, so we have this one. Okay, this one might be a little trickier. So let's do it like this, where you can see half the butt. I'm still not sure if this will work, so let's get started. As always, gonna fill this out. So this is the leg, and then the other leg. I think the other leg needs to be a bit thicker, but let's just start out with this first, and let's do the, as always, the Barbie without any details first. So something like that, and then we have the butt, so we just kind of have a feel. So this is the first butt cheek, and then the second butt cheek. So have a feel of where the other butt cheek is, and then curve that on the other leg, and then kind of adjust the leg width, because I'm thinking I might need a bit more of volume because she is quite voluptuous. Okay, let's see. I guess this should be fine. And then we can flip it over. Perhaps this leg could be even thicker, because this is kind of at an angle. Or I could do it like a bit more spread out, so I can give you guys an example of more exposed private part. Even though I don't really do these as much, and usually if I do draw in that position I'm trying to talk using proper terms. If I use a more risque position, sometimes I need to look up references because I don't really paint those positions that much, so a lot of times when you see those extra lewd positions, I probably use reference for it because I'm not sure how to draw it that way. Okay, so this is me trying to figure out how it should look. Okay, and of course have to make sure that the arm is properly continuous so it doesn't look super weird. Let's go back and hide this arm Yes, like that. Okay. So now I'm going to select this leg. I'm gonna work on this leg using a lot of airbrush. So this is where airbrush comes in handy, especially for female characters. Usually you can get away with using a lot of airbrush with female characters. Okay, and this leg is obviously in highlight, so I'm going to make sure this leg is fairly bright, catching all that light. Like this. Pretty much the important part of private bits is making sure the other bits make sense, like the leg, the butt, the hips, whatnot. Just indicate a little bit of that indentation. The little muscle that's going from the crotch to the leg. And of course the butt is very important, especially when you're doing this angle. Gotta make sure that all the bits show, all the areas show. Okay. Now I'm just gonna select this leg right here and I'm going to start shading it a little bit more different, because this leg is gonna be kind of going downward, so we're gonna get a nice view of the hips. Imagine you're painting chicken leg. That's how I'm feeling right now. Okay, let's have a bit of that nice warmish color, and then a bit of that cool color here. Let's see. Oh gosh. And of course, need to fix the belly just a tad, just to kind of deal with the legs here. And for this, I'm going to kind of open up the crotch area here, just giving it a bit more reach on the side, and some shadow on the inner bit, because we have to, because the crotch is kind of like, oh god, it's hard to explain, but it's curving, it's changing direction, so you can see a bit of the bottom area, so I have to make sure that to put shadow where to emphasize that. So I have the highlight here and the shadow here to kind of make it seem like it's changing direction pretty much. Okay, so now we have that. Have to change the arm so that it doesn't look out of place. There we go. And the hip bit. So I'm going to clean that up and then clean the other leg up too. Okay, let's flip it over, check to see how we're doing, if we're doing the proper. Okay, that's not too bad. I still feel like perhaps we need a bit more length, like drag it down a bit more just because of the angle. So I'm gonna drag it down a little with the free transformation. Once I'm happy, let me confirm it. Okay, that should be fine. And let me work on the butt area now. Make it in shadow. There we go. And the other leg. And of course, really need to kind of make sure the proper shadow is underneath the crotch, especially where the butt is connected, kind of like this. A little bit of indentation, especially where the butt cheek is connected to the leg, like that. Okay, after that we blur some more. I feel like I need to put stocking because usually with my female pinups, I'm really into making them wear stocking. It adds a bit of that sexiness, pretty much. Just gonna put that there. Also to break up the leg too. So her leg is quite thick. Okay, so let's zoom in here. Line up the crotch a bit more. Add a bit more shadow, especially on the outer edge of the leg. So now, oh gosh, we can do the crotch, I think. So now we're gonna do it. So a little bit of it peeks out here, and then the rest goes this way. Oh god, I don't even know if I'm doing it right. Let me just... So if you're not sure if you're doing it right, it sounds so funny. It sounds so wrong. So basically I have another screen where it's a smaller preview, and all the time you have to keep an eye out for the small preview. If you draw the line and it looks off, just try to see what you can do to fix it. So right now I'm going to try to kind of extend this side and make this side a little shorter, and maybe extending, actually no, let's just keep it like that. And you know, make a little shadow here, kind of like making it a little poofy. I don't know why. I find it kind of cute to make it a little fluffier looking, kind of like that. Okay, and then we're going to flip it over because I'm sure it's like crooked. Okay, that's not too bad. I'm just gonna select this bit, copy, paste. Just want to change it up a bit to make it look a little bit more less crooked, pretty much like that. There we go. Before, after. And that's how I do this angle. Just show a bit of the butt, and it should be a little bit more angled as well. Of course, there's different types of female genitalia as there is for male. This is just I guess the type that I like to do, just very simple, one line. You can also put a bit of the pink stuff, the pink, which just requires a little bit of a pinky tone in there. You can also kind of put a little bit around, but not too much though, not too much, just a little bit around. And then of course you can put your highlight, especially with more fluffy girls. There is a clear indentation here, like that. So just indicate that fluffiness, and make this a little sharper as well. There we go. Alright, so that's pretty much I guess a more exposed view, even though this is not really that exposed. We just make this leg a bit thicker. I just can't help it. I need more thick in my life. Okay. Just going to... I need to kind of fix this too. fix that arm so it doesn't look too weird. Okay, so there we have it for the female genitalia. This is up to date to what I'm doing nowadays. I guess in the past I probably did it differently, but that's how I do it nowadays, how I paint it. Okay, so now we're gonna go and work on the dudes. So the dudes will probably have a bit more variety because it's just like girls, theirs is not protruded enough, so it's not really that much detail unless the girl is kind of lying on her back or something. But for guys, you know, at any angle it's gonna be like a bunch of details. You can't escape that no matter what. Okay, so let's get started with the guy. And you know, I kind of secretly enjoy drawing guy stuff because it's just so much more variety. And plus I read a shit ton of yaoi, so I kind of get a lot of my inspiration from that as well. And a lot of other yaoi artists. I really like Bara as well, so I get a lot of inspiration from that too. Okay, so let's get started. Usually I like to start with a with a phallic shape. With a phallic shape. Okay. And I know I get comments saying that my penises look really unrealistic, so lately I've been like trying to make them a bit more realistic looking. So usually realistically they wouldn't like be tapering like this. They would probably be a little bit more straight like that. So first I just selected and I shaded into the skin tone like that. So this guy is not gonna be circumcised, and then the other guy won't, and then the third guy will be not excited. So let's just go for that. Okie dokie. So first I have my shape, and sometimes I also do the balls like that, and everything will be on one layer, so obviously I have to probably change this. Just kind of too accustomed to the shape that I created. So it'll probably look like this. And of course, what I do using the airbrush, just very slightly, just start. Oh gosh, I think this canvas needs to be bigger because otherwise I won't be able to put that much detail into it. Let's go for 6,000. Okay, so now we have a fairly good size. Haha. Okay, so now I usually start with a pinkish tone. I'm just gonna put it around the upper area, and then I'm going to unselect this. Now I'm gonna go in and start using a darker color and I'm just gonna sketch out how it's gonna look like depending on the angle, of course. So this is pretty typical of a penis. Something like that. And if you're having trouble with male genitalia, then I suggest looking at some hardcore yaoi, because that's pretty much where I learned to draw penises. And yes, before my penises didn't really look that good or realistic, but as you go on, you kind of get used to it. Plus the amount of references I look at. And also, definitely another great source of reference for male genitalia is just Google gay porn actors, which I do, and I get some reference from there as well. And that is if you want to aim for more realistic looking ones, because yaoi penises look nothing like, well, they look like an exaggerated version of realistic version. So yeah. And of course I just sketch out the details of the penis. And usually there's like this big vein that goes down like this and connects to the testicles like that. It's kind of like boobs, the testicles, except except usually realistically one is usually higher than the other, so that's how I usually keep it at. And then of course lock that down, and then gonna just shade it up. The testicles usually are also darker, so don't worry if it looks way too dark. So just shade that up, and of course you're gonna flip it to see how that is going. Okay, that's not too bad. I might have to change the angle of the head just a bit to match the kinda like that, because I want to match the angle of the character as well, and just kinda fix it as you go along. And of course you just have to keep refining it. Usually I like to refine with the airbrush because it keeps it nice and soft, which is what you want to make it feel like, because it is a skin after all. And of course you can add like some veins as well, because you know they do have veins, but you don't have to put too much unless you want to make it really detailed. And of course sometimes there's like some other little veins that you can't really see, but it's like underneath the skin, so put some of that as well. Shade over here a bit, especially to squeeze that main vein that goes from the shaft to the balls, pretty much like that. Okay, it's starting to get there. And of course gotta fix the leg accordingly. And probably make that a little smaller. Then I have to adjust the leg as well. Of course now I have to put the shadow, so I'm just gonna put it on this side here, like that. Well, maybe I can move it a little bit downward so that we can see it more clearly. Usually when it comes to that, adding a bit of shadow really helps sell the fact that it's there. And it's going to clean that up. Now that you have it done, have to also put highlight. So gonna follow where the highlight is going, which is from the right to the left. So right being where the highlight is, so let me just select the area where I think the highlight will be hitting, and after that I'm just going to kind of lighten the area up like this. There we go. Once that's done, you might find the need to kind of blend it out a little better. Like that. There we go. And on this side too. Okay, so now that you have that, add a little bit of highlight here, like a mushroom highlight. And then you can add some shine if you want it to be really, really shiny, because I do know that some yaoi penises have this really, really, like, they look like fruits. They look all shiny and delicious, like lollipops. So add that highlight. And down here. But if you don't want it to be shiny, you can just leave it as it is without adding highlight. So somewhat like that. Okay. feel like this needs to be moved over just a little and maybe even up like that. And of course, if I do that, I have to change up the character as well. A lot of times if you're doing full body male pinups, this will end up happening. This is gonna happen. Sometimes you have to switch up your character just to accommodate where everything is. Okay, let me just move this over a bit. Add a bit of shadow here, but not too much. Okay, so I guess this should do it. Let me just merge that, and I'm gonna put shadow here especially. Of course, you can also put some highlight on this side if you really want to make it super shiny. Sort of like that. Okay. I guess that looks okay. Let me just flip it over to see if I'm missing anything. Alright, I think it looks okay. Let me just add a bit more pinkness to it. So sometimes I find the shininess is too overwhelming, so I'm gonna add a secondary shade, which is some pink in there, and that'll help kind of dull it down like that. And then last but not least, let's put a bit of that blue around just to kind of go with the rest of the character to dull down the, or to integrate it more into the background. Just lasso, just so I can get that angle there. And I think that should be it. Also, what you could do is add a little bit of shadow here, like that. There we go. And probably gonna make this a bit more pink, like that. So if you zoom out, you can kind of see it's a bit more blended into the environment. Okay, so now for this guy, I'm thinking this angle is quite tricky. Let's do a a soft one. So first, since I think this might be a little easier, so let's go with the sack here, and then usually it would be sort of like this, I think. Let's go ahead and color that up, and also have the pinkness near the tip, kind of like that. I actually never really drew a penis in this angle, and of course connect it like this. It's sort of like a girl's genitalia, except there's a thing hanging from the bottom. So think of it that way. And of course I have to customize the rest of the leg to suit it. And of course we have the sack underneath, so when it comes to that, depending on if it's circumcised or not, if it is, then it should be a lot simpler. Just have many folds around the bottom area. Perhaps you can have a little bit of the head hanging out, but the rest of it should be kind of like this. And more importantly, there should be sort of like veins up top, which really sells the penis factor, because otherwise it'll be just a tube that's hanging. And this is, I think, might be the easiest angle, and perhaps a bit of shine. Just have a little bit of it, kind of like that. And once you have that done, kind of select the surrounding so that we can add a bit of that blue around it. Oh gosh, just a little bit. Don't want to make it too crazy. Sort of like that. And also, just like the girl's private part, we need to have the belly and then this area like that, I suppose. And of course we have the balls underneath like this. Kind of like that. Okay, might not look all that good. If that happens, you can easily change it, just move it around. Definitely recommend doing this on a separate layer, maybe a little bit lower like that, because if it's on a separate layer, if it looks awkward or you need to change it, you can definitely do that. Let's go ahead and do that. There we go. And maybe just a little lighter to bring it out. Just gonna move this a bit closer, the leg a bit closer to it. Kind of like that. Okay, and of course let me flip it just to make sure that it doesn't look too awkward. I guess it looks alright. Okay, so now let's move on to the other one. So this one, we'll do an uncircumcised version, just for variety, and let's make it kind of like over here. Like these. And we'll make it kind of girthy. And just get that done. So using a slightly darker color and then a lighter color, and then put a bit of pink there. After that's done, have to go ahead and kind of paint out the balls area. Usually it's quite dark. And of course we have to adjust the leg to this. Let me just... So similar to the female, just kind of make sure that you have the nice separation of the leg versus the crotch. Now, maybe it needs to be a bit lower, so I'll just make it slightly lower, get the bulge going, and then the phallic shape. I guess we could make it go like that. So instead of doing the classic mushroom, we're just gonna go ahead and we can have the head poke out a little. And of course, if you're not really sure how to draw, definitely recommend looking up references online, Google, or just find really well drawn yaoi. That usually really helps, at least for me. Even though when I do reference yaoi penises, it's not completely realistic, so depends on what you're aiming for. So usually it would look like this, and of course if it looks a little weird or the angle's not right, you can always change it. You just change that up. There we go. So now I have my lines and basic shape. And of course, you can start editing it right away to blend that into the character. This one I'll probably create a shadow right here. Always have a shadow. If you have a shadow, it'll seem a bit more legit. That way, it'll seem a bit more grounded to the character if it's casting somewhat of a shadow on the character. You just kind of wanna move it around a bit more, like here. Okay, now let's flip it over. I really want to make sure that it's at a right angle. Probably have to change this a little, especially when it comes to genitalia. A lot of things can change, and you might want to kind of tweak around different stuff. Maybe I'll bring it up. Oh god, it looks really messy. Let me just blend that in, and I guess this should be okay if we keep it there. And clean up the legs. So now we can work on it. Another thing I like to do is try to blend it in as much as possible to the character's skin tone already. Of course, you can go a little darker for the whole thing, so you can kind of use the airbrush to darken it up like these. Okay, now I'm gonna go in and start kind of adding some highlights to it, some highlight areas, especially the vein here that connects from the tip to the base to the balls. So that's quite important, because that's like one major not landmark, I guess landmark of the penis. For the girl, it's the slit, but for the guy, it's this line right here. You have to have the line to make it seem at least readable, I guess. And apologize for the lack of angles. This is however usually the angle that I draw at, so I wanted to demonstrate it to you guys. Okay, and have it highlighted over this area, like that. And of course, you can put some veins on the other side as well. And you can kind of refine the tip as much as you want. But anyways, usually I like to paint on big canvases because I'm rather rough with the general rendering of genitalia. I mean, if you guys zoom in on my canvas, you can definitely see that there's areas where it's not like completely rendered. That's just up to you. And then I'm going to just kind of use the airbrush and just kind of airbrush out two bulges like this. Okay. And then of course you can kind of use the lasso tool to kind of make sure that it's nice and sharp and clean. Like this. somewhat like that, and then just blend out the surroundings, make sure that everything makes sense. Like that, and then if need be, edit it in a way that it makes sense for where your penis is, I guess. Because sometimes when I do the not safe for work, I have to change up the pose a little or the angle of things just so that it would make sense. So now that we have that done, let's do a nice little highlight. So I just selected the area where the lighting's coming from, and then I'm just gonna make it a little bit brighter. Like this. Just select. And of course, once you have that done, you can go ahead and blend it in a bit more. Like that. And last part, I'm just gonna select this area so that I can apply a darker and a sharper shadow. There we go. Okay. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Oh gosh. I need to clean the shape up a bit. Just make it a little bit less large on top. And add like maybe a little dot for highlight. And of course you can do the shiny fruit penis thing if you want to. If not, you can just leave it as it is. But adding a bit of shine helps it look better too. Okay, so now I'm just gonna clean that up just a little. There we go. And of course, with that, I have to fix the rest of the area here. Okay, kind of like that. Okie dokie. And blend that in. Blend this in too. There we go. Okay. And clean this up too. Okay. So that is it for that angle. So these are just a very, very basic. Oh god, that looks weird. I'm sorry, guys. If it looks weird in some of them. Maybe this one would look better if it was more lower. I think it would. Okay, this looks better if it's lowered like that. A lot of times you have to like change the angle as well. Okay, maybe move it towards here a bit more. I think that should do it. And of course I feel like might have to change this a little bit, move it down. Just lower that just to fit the other side a bit more. You should also do that. Just keep eyeing it, make sure that everything is nice and even and makes sense. Okay, so I think that makes the most sense. Let me just add some more shadow underneath so that it feels a bit more blended in. Okay, so now I'm just going to select this side and add a bit of blue, that blue. Just a bit to to make it feel a bit more evened out, a bit more soft. Okay. I'm gonna add some highlight here. So now it's kind of shiny looking. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much it. For the genitalia, it's quite, it's not that detailed, however it does give you guys an idea of how I usually draw these areas for those of you that are curious or need some help. And of course, if you need more help, definitely look up some references, because I think that pretty much everything concerning not safe for work I've had to learn using references out there, whether that's like yaoi or hentai. Actually, for female, I recommend going on Google and looking up, at least for me, because you know, sometimes if you just Google naked girls, it will show like the most lewdest and most hardcore porn ever. For me, I just Google something a little more subtle, like bikini, or even just beautiful naked girl. Something a bit more less I guess less hardcore, because my pinups are usually quite just like the standard standing up, and for guys it's a bit more like hardcore because because I do reference yaoi a lot, so maybe that's why sometimes it feels a bit more hardcore. But yeah, that's pretty much for this tutorial. As always, I hope you guys learned something, hope it was helpful. You know, I always encourage people to like draw whatever they want, as long as it's not hurting nobody. And plus, anatomy is very fun and helpful when you to do. So yeah, I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next voiceover tutorial. Have a great day, guys.